Tamburlaine the Great is a play in 2 parts by Christopher Marlowe. It is loosely based on the life of the Central Asian Emperor Tamurlane, Timur the Lame, d. 1405. Written in 1587 or 1588, the play is a milestone in Elizabethan public drama. It marks a turning away from the clumsy language and loose plotting of the earlier Tudor dramatists, and a new interest in fresh and vivid language, memorable action, and intellectual complexity. Along with Thomas Kyd's The Spanish Tragedy, it may be considered the first popular success of London's public stage. Marlowe, generally considered the best of that group of writers known as the University Wits, influenced playwrights well into the Jacobean period, and echoes of the bombast and ambition of Tamburlaine's language can be found in English plays all the way to the Puritan closing of the theatres in 1642. While Tamburlaine is considered inferior to the great tragedies of the late Elizabethan and early Jacobean period, its significance in creating a stock of themes and, especially, in demonstrating the potential of blank verse in drama, is still acknowledged. Whereas the real Timur was of Turkic-Mongolian ancestry and belonged to the nobility, for dramatic purposes Marlowe depicts him as a Scythian shepherd who rises to the rank of emperor. Summary. Part 1 opens in Persepolis. The Persian emperor, Mycetes, dispatches troops to dispose of Tamburlaine, a Scythian shepherd and, at that point, a nomadic bandit. In the same scene, Mycetes' brother Khosrow plots to overthrow Mycetes and assume the throne. The scene shifts to Scythia, where Tamburlaine is shown wooing, capturing, and winning Zenocrate, the daughter of the Egyptian king. Confronted by Mycetes' soldiers, he persuades first the soldiers and then Khosrow to join him in a fight against Mycetes. Although he promises Khosrow the Persian throne, Tamburlaine reneges on this promise and, after defeating Mycetes, takes personal control of the Persian Empire. Now a powerful figure, Tamburlaine turns his attention to Bajazeth, emperor of the Turks. He defeats Bajazeth and his tributary kings, capturing the emperor and his wife Zabina. The victorious Tamburlaine keeps the defeated ruler in a cage and feeds him scraps from his table, releasing Bajazeth only to use him as a footstool. Bajazeth later kills himself on stage by bashing his head against the bars upon hearing of Tamburlaine's next victory. Upon finding his body, Zabina does likewise. After conquering Africa and naming himself emperor of that continent, Tamburlaine sets his eyes on Damascus, a target which places the Egyptian sultan, his to-be father-in-law, directly in his path. Zenocrate pleads with her future husband to spare her father. He complies, instead making the sultan a tributary king. The play ends with the wedding of Tamburlaine and Zenocrate, who is crowned Empress of Persia. In Part 2, Tamburlaine grooms his sons to be conquerors in his wake as he continues to attack neighboring kingdoms. His oldest son, Caliphas, preferring to stay by his mother's side and not risk death, incurs Tamburlaine's wrath. Meanwhile, the son of Bajazeth, Clepine, escapes from Tamburlaine's jail and gathers a group of tributary kings to his side, planning to avenge his father. Clepine and Tamburlaine meet in battle, where Tamburlaine is victorious. But finding that Caliphas remained in his tent during the battle, Tamburlaine kills him in anger. Tamburlaine then forces the defeated kings to pull his chariot to his next battlefield, declaring, "Holla ye pampered jades of Asia! What, can ye draw but 20 miles a day?" Upon reaching Babylon, which holds out against him, Tamburlaine displays further acts of extravagant savagery. When the governor of the city attempts to save his life in return for revealing the city treasury, Tamburlaine has him hang from the city walls and shot. He orders the inhabitants, men, women, and children, to be bound and thrown into a nearby lake. Lastly, Tamburlaine scornfully burns a copy of the Quran and claims to be greater than God. In the final act, he becomes ill but manages to defeat one more foe before he dies. He bids his sons to conquer the remainder of the earth as he departs life. In both parts. Tamburlaine in Part 1 a Scythian shepherd, in Part 2 King of Persia. Tekels in Part 1 a follower of Tamburlaine, in Part 2 King of Fez. Uzumsiazin in Part 1 a follower of Tamburlaine, in Part 2 King of Morocco. Theridamas in Part 1 a Persian lord, later a follower of Tamburlaine, in Part 2 King of Algiers. Zenocrate daughter of the Sultan of Egypt, in Part 2 wife of Tamburlaine. Only in Part 1. Mycetes King of Persia. Khosrow brother of Mycetes. Senius a Persian lord. Ortygius a Persian lord. Meander a Persian lord. Menophen a Persian lord. Bajazeth emperor of Turkey. Zabina wife of Bajazeth. Ebi maid of Zabina. King of Algier. King of Fez. King of Morocco. Alcidamas king of Arabia. Sultan of Egypt. Governor of Damascus. Agitas. Magnates 1. Capellan an Egyptian. Anab maid of Zenocrate. Virgin of Damascus 1. Virgin of Damascus 2. Only in Part 2. Caliphas son of Tamburlaine. Amyrus son of Tamburlaine. Celebinus son of Tamburlaine. Orcanes king of Natalia. King of Jerusalem. King of Soria. King of Trebizond. Gazellus viceroy of the city of Byron. Eurybassa. Sigismund king of Hungary. Frederick peer of Hungary. Baldwin peer of Hungary. Clopine son of Bajazeth. Alameda keeper of Clopine. King of Amasia. Governor of Babylon. Captain of Balsara. Olympia wife of the captain of Balsara. Captain. Maximus. Perdiccas. The play in both parts was entered into the Stationer's Register on the 14th of August 1590. Both parts were published together in a single black-letter octavo that same year by the printer Richard Jones. Its text is usually referred to as O1. A second edition was issued by Jones in 1592, and a third reprint appeared in 1597, essentially reprinting the text of the first edition. The plays were next published separately in quarto by the bookseller Edward White, Part 1 in 1605 and Part 2 in 1606, which reprinted the text of the 1597 printing. 5. Although Christopher Marlowe was not actually cited as the author in the first printings of the play, no author is named in the first clear attributions to Marlowe or much later than 1590. Scholars attribute the play to Marlowe based on similarities to his other works. Many passages in Tamburlaine foreshadow and echo passages from others of his works, and there is a clear parallel between the character development in Tamburlaine and that of the majority of Marlowe's other characters. This evidence alone leads scholars to believe with virtual unanimity that Marlowe wrote Tamburlaine. The play is often linked to Renaissance humanism, which idealizes the potential of human beings. Tamburlaine's aspiration to immense power raises profound religious questions as he arrogates for himself a role as the scourge of God, an epithet originally applied to Attila the Hun. Some readers have linked this stance with the fact that Marlowe was accused of atheism. Others have been more concerned with an anti-Muslim thread of the play, highlighted in a scene in which the main character burns the Quran. Jeff Daly notes in his article, Christian Underscoring in Tamburlaine the Great, Part 2, that Marlowe's work is a direct successor to the traditional medieval morality plays, 9, and that, whether or not he was an atheist, he had inherited religious elements of content and allegorical methods of presentation. The influence of Tamburlaine on the drama of the 1590s cannot be overstated. The play exemplified, and in some cases created, many of the typical features of high Elizabethan drama: grandiloquent and often beautiful imagery, hyperbolic expression, and strong characters consumed by overwhelming passions. The first recorded comments on the play are negative. A letter written in 1587 relates the story of a child being killed by the accidental discharge of a firearm during a performance, and the next year Robert Greene, in the course of an attack on Marlowe, condemned the atheistic Tamburlaine in the Epistle to Paramedes the blacksmith. That most playgoers and playwrights responded with enthusiasm is amply demonstrated by the proliferation of Asian tyrants and aspiring minds in the drama of the 1590s. Marlowe's influence on many characters in Shakespeare's history plays has been noted by, among others, Algernon Swinburne. Stephen Greenblatt considers it likely that Tamburlaine was among the first London plays that Shakespeare saw, an experience that directly inspired his early work such as the three Henry VI plays. 7. By the early years of the 17th century, this hyperbolic language had gone out of style. Shakespeare himself puts a speech from Tamburlaine in the mouth of his play-addled soldier Pistol 2 Henry IV 2.4.155. 8. In Timber, Ben Jonson condemned the Tamerlanes and Tamerchams of the late age, which had nothing in them but the cynical strutting and furious vociferation to warrant them to the ignorant gapers. Subsequent ages of critics have not reversed the position advanced by Jonson that the language and events in plays such as Tamburlaine are unnatural and ultimately unconvincing. Still, the play was regarded as the text above all others, wherein the whole restless temper of the age finds expression, long. Robert Fletcher notes that Marlowe, gained a high degree of flexibility and beauty by avoiding irregularly end-stopped arrangement, by taking pains to secure variety of pause and accent, and by giving his language poetic condensation and suggestiveness. Fletcher. In his poem on Shakespeare, Johnson mentions Marlowe's mighty line, a phrase critics have accepted as just, as they have also Johnson's claim that Shakespeare surpassed it. But while Shakespeare is commonly seen to have captured a far greater range of emotions than his contemporary, Marlowe retains a significant place as the first genius of blank verse in English drama. The first part of Tamburlaine was performed by the Admiral's men late in 1587, around a year after Marlowe's departure from Cambridge University. Edward Alleyn performed the role of Tamburlaine, and it apparently became one of his signature roles. The play's popularity, significant enough to prompt Marlowe to produce the sequel, led to numerous stagings over the next decade. The stratification of London audiences in the early Jacobean period changed the fortunes of the play. For the sophisticated audiences of private theatres such as Blackfriars and by the early 1610s, the Globe Theatre, Tamburlaine's, high astounding terms, were a relic of a simpler dramatic age. Satiric playwrights occasionally mimicked Marlowe's style, as John Marston does in the Induction to Antonio and Melita. The National Theatre production in 1976 featured Albert Finney in the title role. The production opened the New Olivier Theatre on the South Bank. Peter Hall directed. This production is generally considered the most successful of the rare modern productions. Brian Cox credits a remark from fellow actor Oliver Cotton during the production as resulting in the title of his autobiography Putting the Rabbit in the Hat, published in 2021. In 1993, the Royal Shakespeare Company performed an award-winning production of the play, with Anthony Sher as Tamburlaine and Tracy Ann Oberman as Olympia. Jeff Daly directed both parts of the play, uncut, at the American Theatre of Actors in New York City. He presented Part 1 in 1997 and Part 2 in 2003, both in the outdoor theater located in the courtyard of 314 West 54th Street. Avery Brooks played the lead role in a production of the play for the Shakespeare Theatre Company. The play ran from the 28th of October 2007 to the 6th of January 2008 and was directed by Michael Kahn. A new production combining parts 1 and 2, trimming Marlowe's 2 5-act plays to 3 hours of stage time with a half-hour intermission 15, edited and directed by Michael Boyd, opened at the Polanski Shakespeare Center, Brooklyn, New York on the 16th of November 2014 with John Douglas Thompson as Tamburlaine, Merritt Jansen as Xenocrate Clepine in a large, multi-purpose ensemble cast. A production of Tamburlaine was delivered by the Lazarus Theatre Company in London West End at the Tristan Bates Theatre between the 25th of August and the 12th of September 2015. On 1 November 2014, Tamburlaine opened at theatre for a new audience where it won the 2015 Obie Award for John Douglas Thompson's performance. It closed on the 14th of January 2015. In August 2018, the Royal Shakespeare Company began a run of Tamburlaine in Stratford-upon-Avon, England. While the play has been revived periodically over the past century, the obstacles it presents, a large cast and an actor capable of performing in such a challenging role chief among them, have prevented more widespread performance. In general, the modern playgoer may still echo F.P. Wilson's question, asked at mid-century, how many of us can boast that we are more than readers of Tamburlaine?